discussion on a possible move to block scheduling at the high school, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Really, the purpose tonight is to just give you kind of an overview of some of the things that we've been looking at as a district, basically as a high school, staff members, administrators, and just give you as the board members and the public, just give you a little view of a summary of some of the things that we talk about when we investigate the block schedule. I was fortunate enough, giving my age away, about 20 years ago, to be involved in a restructuring process at Jackson Memorial High School. And part of that restructuring process was to looking at the block schedule. Things were a lot different then. There was no school in Ocean County that had looked at a block schedule. So we basically had to go almost out of state for a couple of schools. We did a lot of research on it. The teachers were very involved in it. And basically what happened in that time is we made the move to block scheduling, and they still have that. The same type of schedule we did. It did wonders for that school, for Jackson at this time. And the principal at that time said to me, he said, you know, you'll know what type of program you have is it all depends on when you leave. When you leave this district, let's see what happens to the program. And the thing I'm most proud about is when I left Jackson, and it was a great district, 20 years later, they're still doing the same program, block scheduling. They opened another high school with the same program. Bricktown has used the same program as Jackson. Both of their high schools are doing it. Lacey, Barnegat, those are schools in Ocean County. When we did the block, Monsignor Donovan at the time, maybe it was St. Joe's at the time, Monsignor Donovan, now Donovan Catholic, came to us, and we helped them start their program. So a lot of good things happened, but a lot of work from a lot of good people. And really, the most important part is our students benefited. And our students benefited greatly, mainly because of the opportunities it presented. It did a lot of positive things for the district. So at this point, we're looking at things here, and we did get a lot of input from staff and so forth. But let me go through some of the things that we talked about in a block schedule and give you a little idea of where we are. Oh, thank you, Ovana. So on the agenda tonight is basically just talk a little bit about what is block scheduling, because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of different combinations. Different schools do it different ways. We're in the process of looking at a couple different things. Next question we'll try to answer is, why should we consider block scheduling in Manchester? Why would it work in Manchester? Are we different than Jackson? Are we different than Rick? Are we different than some of the other schools? And what are some of our needs? Because really, a program has to fit the individual needs of the district. What are the advantages and what are the concerns? In any new program, obviously you're going to see advantages, but there's also times when you change that you have to be concerned about things. So I want to address those concerns. What would it look like? What would our schedule have a chance to look like? How were we investigating the schedule? What did we do? What was our process? And we have some reports from some of the committees, and we've had a number of committees working in the district, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll pick up some of my, not minions, but some of my committee people to come up and talk a little bit about the report. So basically, what is block scheduling? You look at two different types of things. The first is our traditional schedule. Right now in Manchester, we're about 48 minutes long. There are 7 instructional classes and 1 lunch period, and that comes out to be about 336 minutes of instruction. In a block schedule, what you'd have, in a traditional schedule, if you think about it, and I don't know if anybody would actually take a job that would be like this, but basically what it is our students go into a room, have a boss or a teacher, they sit at a desk for 48 minutes, then a bell rings, they all get up and go to another place, another office with another boss, and do something totally unrelated for 48 minutes, then another bell rings, and then they go again and again, and that goes through 8 times during the year, 8 times during the day. So a lot of difficulties with that, in that they don't build up a lot of relationships, they don't build up a lot of things that the demands are now. And really, when you look at it, it's the demands of colleges. We're asking our kids to be prepared for college. That's really our goal. We should be preparing our kids for college, or we should be preparing for a career. And those are two of our most important times. That's not just to graduate, because that's certainly a goal, but we want our kids to have the same opportunities every other school has, and even more so, because that's what our responsibility is as a board. It's my responsibility as a superintendent, our responsibility as teachers, to really give those students the opportunities to be successful. In a block schedule, there's three types really. There's a 4x4, which means you have 4 classes every day for a semester, basically from September to January. And then after January is over, you have 4 new classes starting in February. There's advantages to that schedule. There's an A-B schedule, which means you have 8 classes. 4 the first on Monday, 4 different ones on Tuesday, 4 different ones on Wednesday, because you're going in longer periods. The hybrid is a little of both. Some classes are semester, they start in September and finish in January, and some classes start in September and go every other day all the way to the end of the year. So there's a combination of those two. The classes will be roughly about 85 minutes, 88 minutes. There will be 8 classes per year, so automatically our students will have 1 more class to take, 1 more opportunity to take whatever classes they want. And I know Mrs. Raimondo they did a little survey and they talked about some of our students. If you had the possibility of taking another class, what would you like? And they had some great ideas, whether it was forensic, whether it was astronomy, whether it was something in the physical education part. You have a lot of different courses that they can't take now because our courses are only 7, and giving them the option to take 1 more class gives them the opportunity to be able to put something on their transcript that makes people in Manchester a little different than everybody else, because we'll have different types of classes. And those classes would be generated by the teachers and the students, whatever their likes are, whatever their electives, whatever their interests are. Instruction-wise, it will be 340 to 352 minutes. So over the year, you get 1 additional course, anywhere roughly between 12 to 48 hours additional of instruction. Not changing the length of the day. The length of the day is going to be exactly the same. But you could have additional 12 to 48 hours of instruction. Okay, why? Why would this schedule, why would we look at this schedule as opposed to, it's always worked before in Manchester? Well, we have a couple of things when you look at what our students are working with. First of all, the education part. That's shifted totally now. When I was teaching, just a couple of years ago, a lot of it is the teachers were the dispenser of information. They knew what you needed to know, and we would tell you, and then things would not change. But right now in our society now, with the advent of technology and with computers, our kids have access to all that information. They don't really need us as teachers to give them information. You got the information. You can pick that up in a computer. But the teacher's challenge is to get the students to be able to work with that information. What do I do? Because that's really what the jobs are today. The jobs have changed a little. Their jobs used to stay the same for 20, 30 years. People would stay in the same job for 30 years, 40 years. That same company, this is what I'm working. Nowadays, it's not unusual to have 7, 8, 10 different jobs during your career. And those jobs are different. In our elementary schools, we're probably trying to educate children to take jobs over that they haven't even been invented yet. And that's really the challenge. And we know how the society is today. The workforce is very challenging. We have a lot of people getting in college, getting even degrees, but not able to get careers or not even to get jobs. And that's a scary thing. We want what's best for our students in Manchester. We want them, because they're competing not only with students in Manchester, but they're competing not only with students in Ocean County, but they're competing across the state and even across the country for jobs. And really, we owe it to them to give them every advantage we can. So you need to prepare for college and career. One of the 3 best skills that when they interview the Fortune 500 company, what do they look for in somebody, what they're going to hire? The major companies, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for communication skills, they're looking for collaboration skills, and they're looking for the ability to function as part of the team. Those things weren't part of what we did in teaching 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was basically the teacher getting up and lecturing, and everybody sitting at a desk and doing their own work. Now I will say, our teachers do a lot. We do a lot more things in the classroom, but we're still handcuffed with 48 minutes. You're not going to be able to go with the same depth that you need to. Too many students not graduating on time. Looking at our statistics, our graduation rate isn't good. It's one of the lower parts of Ocean County. That's something that we have to address. Too many of our students are not graduating on time. They're dropping out, and without that high school diploma, that puts them at a terrific disadvantage. It's our responsibility to find as many opportunities as we can for our students to graduate. And this is one way to do it. Limited opportunities for students who have fallen behind or catch up. We see a student who, for example, fails English in 9th grade. What happens to that student? Well, in 10th grade, that student who failed 9th grade has to take English 9 and English 10. And a student who has trouble with English, now we're asking them to take 2 English classes in 10th grade. And when they get to 11th, they may have to take 2 or even 3 English classes. Because the days of summer school are gone. It used to be if you failed a class, you'd go to summer school, the school would pay for it, and you're set. Our students now, if they have to go to summer school, they have to pay. Their parents have to pay, and it's not cheap to get a course. So providing opportunities for students to be able to catch up so that they can graduate with the rest of their class. That's really what, no student wants to fail. They want to pass, and if they're given the opportunity to catch up, and if they've had a difficult time in English in 9th grade, they can retake that class and get back on track without having to double up in English. Need my glasses here. Limited opportunities to take additional course or event. Right now, we're limited in what we can. If you're you want to major in math or you want to major in science, we don't have the same type of courses that some of the other schools do because we're limited with our program of studies. Jackson, Brick, they're able to offer more courses than we do. And that's not fair to our kids. Our kids, if they're challenged, they would love to take a different science. They would love to take a forensics class. They would love to take an astronomy class. They would love to take another math class or an English class or a social studies class. All of those things would be possible, and that puts them on that same track or even higher than some of the other schools. And again, that's something that our kids deserve to have. Opportunities for varied instruction, different instruction, implementation of technology, higher level thinking. All of those things now become possible in 85 minutes. We now have more and more technology, so technology is no longer, let's wait till next Tuesday that I can go to the computer lab. Those computers are there right now. And we're there in 3 to 8, 9 to 12. We're trying to get very close to getting a one-on-one. That means every class you go into, you should be able to use a computer in class. And that's really our goal, because that's what our kids have to compete against. Everybody, no matter what job you have, you're looking at technology. You need to do that. My father-in-law was a mechanic. Never touched a computer in his life. Right now, if you're a mechanic, you got to have a computer. It's all diagnostics. The world has changed. We need to have our students to have the opportunities to be successful. And that's really where we're coming from this. It's to give our students the opportunities to be more successful. Fewer subjects to focus on at one time. Basically, right now, we have our students working at 7 different classes for the whole year. And that's sometimes very challenging, especially if you have those higher level math, higher level science, higher level English, higher level history. That's very challenging. When you have 7 of them, you're not be able to go into so much depth. When you have 4 subjects to concentrate on, that's all we're looking at, 4 subjects at a time. You're able to concentrate on those particular subjects and work through them, and obviously the success rate is going to be much higher. Lower student-teacher ratio. If you believe, like I believe, that our teachers working with our students is the best situation, then that's what we're really looking for. My goal is to get our teachers working with fewer students at a time so that they can have a better rapport and be able to work with our students better. If our teachers have 150 students during the day, that's too much. They're not able to get to know the students, they're not able to work with the students, they're not able to individualize. Everybody has a favorite teacher, but if you have only 4 teachers to work with at our students, there's so much more rapport you can build with that teacher. And I think if the teachers and the students are put together, they're going to be successful. Because I know what our staff is in Manchester, and I know our students in Manchester. And given the opportunities, they're going to be successful. The one thing I will say is moving to a block schedule is not going to solve everything. That's not the answer to everything. Really, what a block schedule does is it provides students with more opportunities to be successful. But the key to the success of any program is still the students, the teachers, and the parents. That will never change. All a block schedule does is give the students and the teachers more opportunities to be successful. And that's what a schedule can do. What are the advantages of schools using the block schedule? Now, like I said before, 20-some years ago, we implemented this in Jackson, and we saw some of the changes. Right now, around Ocean County, and I think our visitation committee is going to talk a little bit about some of the schools they visited. But what are the things that happen that are pretty much uniform with any school that has a block schedule? Well, the graduation rate increases. Why? Because the students are focusing on 4 classes instead of 7 classes. And they're much more successful with that. If students fall behind, they're able to pick it up and graduate. That's really one of the key parts of the block schedule, is you get the graduation rate to increase. More kids are successful. They're not handed a diploma, they're still earning the diploma. But the graduation rate will increase. And that's one area, when I look at a block schedule, that's an area that we need in Manchester, because our graduation rate isn't where it should be. Attendance rate increase, both students and staff. Believe it or not, when you go into a block schedule, it's less hectic. You're not dealing with 8 different subjects or 7 different subjects. You're dealing with 4 at a time. The attendance rates go up. The discipline referrals are reduced. It's a different atmosphere when you're focusing on classes and you're doing less walking in the halls, going back and forth, and you're able to focus on the classes that you need to be successful. Grades have improved. All of this is basically what happens when you go to a block schedule. Why are the grades improved? Because the rapport between the teachers and the students are different. I no longer have 150 students I'm worried about. I'm only worrying about 75. I can grade papers. I can do essays. I can do essays for 75 and sit down and individualize, find out what the students are having trouble with, and work with them very closely, almost on a one-on-one basis, because the student-teacher ratio is so low. Better rapport with students and teachers, that happens. More in-depth learning, and we talked about the difference between covering a lot of topics or covering fewer topics in more depth. Attitudes about school improve, students, staff, and parents. When we put it into Jackson, we did a survey after the first year, overwhelmingly popular. I can tell you that in Virginia, since 1995 to the year 2000, there was 201 schools that went to block schedule. After all those years, there was 1 school out of 201 that wanted to go back to the traditional schedule. 200 schools stayed because they had good results. More course selections, again, it gives our students more opportunities to be successful. What a great thing to have on your resume when you have different courses in there that maybe other schools don't even offer. And that's really an advantage for Manchester. And that's, again, going back to, we want to do what's best for our students and giving them a chance to compete against schools in Jackson or Brick or Lacey or any of the schools around. That's what we owe our students, to give them an opportunity to have more courses. And our teachers are willing to teach those courses. They've suggested, I could teach this class, I could teach a forensics class, I can teach this different calculus class, I can teach those. Those are things that we have here, but we're handcuffing our staff and our students because we don't have enough room in our schedule now. Continuity of schools that have changed, basically they stay. When they're in the block schedule, they stay because they like the schedule. Here's the concerns, and these are concerns I've heard 20 years ago, and they're legitimate concerns. They're concerns I would have if somebody said I was going to change from a traditional schedule to a block schedule. First of all, retention. Are we going to forget everything? You may not have a math class instead of just over the summer, it may be 5 months instead of 2 months. Well, what the studies have found, and it really was not a problem in Jackson when we did it, we were watching very closely because that's something that we were concerned with. The first thing is, what information do we need to retain? If you're memorizing something or it's a fact, yeah, you'll probably forget it after the first 4 to 6 weeks. After the first 4 to 6 weeks, you'll forget a lot. After that, the difference between 6 weeks and 8 weeks, or 8 weeks and 10 weeks, it levels off. But the point is if it's memorized things, you can pick that back up. When I was in 4th grade, I knew all the capitals of the 50 states. Yes, there were 50 states when I was in 4th grade. But I knew them. I forgot them the next summer. Even though I was in 5th grade, I forgot what I learned in 4th grade because it was memorized. It was something I had to know rote by. That's the way I learned it. So those things you will have a tendency to forget. But those things you can pick back up. The skills and the concepts you'll remember because it's the way you were taught. And that's the second part, is how is the material learned? How were you taught? If somebody's lecturing to you and you listen to that, studies show that you remember about 5% of that. So if somebody lectures for 60 minutes, they'll probably got 5% of that you'll remember. That's a small part. But if you're actively involved in it, if you're involved with activities, if you're involved in a computer, if you're involved in a discussion, then your percentage of remembering that stuff jumps up to 50, 60, 70%. And that's basically what it is. It's how you're taught. That's the most important part for the retention. And last thing is the length of time. It's just every week you don't forget more and more. It levels off. So if it's something over 4 months, it's pretty much the same as if you forgot it in 4 months, you're not going to remember any more or less than 6 months. Results from other schools. And I can tell you every school that we visited, every school that I've been associated with in Jackson, it has not been a problem as far as retention. There are some subjects that you have to be careful of. And I would say something like a world language. That's something because you got to know vocabulary there. So that's something you prioritize, and you may take Spanish 1 the first half of the year and Spanish 2 the second half of the year. And when you do that, that really improves your comprehension when you talk about language. And one of the things you can do is when we did this in Jackson, we had several students who were very big into world languages. They ended up taking 4 years of Spanish and 4 years of French. They had 8 years of foreign language before they even graduated high school. They were way ahead of anybody else when they went to college because they had 4 years of two different languages. And that's something that you can do in a block schedule. Testing time. When do we take the test? First thing is if people are concerned about, what about the state test? Right now it's the PARCC. Used to be the HESPA, now it's the PARCC. Well, from the state they realize there's so many schools in the block scheduling that the PARCC is given twice a year for those people in the block schedule. If you're taking algebra the first half of the year, your PARCC test will be given in January, just when you're finishing the class. And if you take algebra the second half of the year, you'll be taking a PARCC test in May or June at the end of the year. They give it twice for block scheduling schools. AP testing is only given once. It's given in May. So there's something that you have to change around. So you would do an alternating block. So you would have, basically you would have English or history or whatever AP exam you're taking, you'd have that the full year. You wouldn't stop in January and then take the test in May. That's like me asking you to now take your final exam after you finished in history in June, take your final exam in November. You're not going to do well on that, no matter what schedule you're in. So you move that schedule around so your AP testing is given right at the end of the class. Change. It's very difficult to change in education. It's like we've always done this the way. Why do we have to change? Why? It's working now. It's working sometimes, but sometimes change is necessary in order to get better. I make the analogy, when I was getting a new pair of shoes, it's always tough. I always love to have my older pair of shoes on. I never want to change them because they're so comfortable. But eventually, you got to change them because that's what you need to do. You have to change in order to get better. And if you want to compete against other schools, other students, because that's what you're going to do, whether you're going to college, whether we're going to a career, whatever we're doing, we're competing against everybody. You want to have the most opportunities as possible. First year courses in 4x4 change, time on task, focus. People, some teachers will say, and it was a legitimate concern when we first started, is you have students for 85 minutes. They're not going to pay attention for 85 minutes. They're going to be all over the place. Well, the only analogy I can make it is my wife, and there are other teachers around here. My wife teaches kindergarten. She has those students the entire day. So I have teachers saying, well, yeah, but they do different things. That's exactly right. You have to do different things. You can't sit there for 80 minutes and talk. You can't do 80 minutes of anything. you have to change what you're doing. So in an 80-minute class, our students should be doing at least 3 or 4 different things. Whether it's working on a computer, working in groups, working in discussions, listen to a lecture, all of those things are different things. All of them would probably be like 15 to 20 minutes, and then they're changing. Just like when I observed the middle school math department or the middle school English department, they're all doing block. And those kids are doing very well, and those are 80-some minute classes. Our middle school students are doing it, our kindergarten students are doing it, I'm sure our high school students are. What would it look like? What's the schedule look like every day for our students? And this is just a sample. First of all, here's a sample of a weekly schedule. You would have, say, algebra, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 84 minutes, 85 minutes, whatever it comes out to be. You would have history, second period, every day, boom, 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 boom. Meet with the same teacher, 5 days. Pretty much what you're doing now. Third period, you'd have a lunch somewhere in there, and you'd have world language. Third period, every day, all the way through. Now let's suppose you're in band. Well, if you're in band, you can't stop in January. You got to go through the whole year. A band person's going to go through the whole year because that's what the course is. So you would alternate your days from band to phys ed. You may have band on Monday, phys ed on Tuesday, band on Wednesday, phys ed on Thursday, band on Friday, phys ed on following Monday, and so on and so forth. So you'll have 90 days of band and 90 days of phys ed. Because band's important that you have all year. I talked to the journalism teacher. Advanced journalism is important to have the whole year. So you have advanced journalism the whole year, but that would be alternating block. This is what a yearly schedule might look like. You would have algebra first period, first and second marking period, and then in February, you get biology for the second half of the year. Second period could be history the first half of the year, and then you switch over at the end of January to English. Third would be world language the first half of the year, and then you may have art for the second half of the year. And the fourth period, you would have band PE all the way through. That would not change. That would stay the same. So that gives you a little idea what a block would look like. Very consistent, very same thing, algebra, and you're only dealing with 4 subjects at a time, and that's really the important part. Investigating the block. What have we been doing? Last year, we came up with 5 committees reporting to a steering committee. At that time, we had 55 teachers that volunteered. I asked, is anybody interested in serving on a committee to look at block scheduling? I had 55, I shouldn't say 55 teachers, 55 staff members. Some were guidance counselors, some were child study team, some were teachers, some people from the media center, that type of stuff. But 55 people sat on the committees and they emailed me to volunteer because they wanted to be a part of what's looking at. And they did a lot of good work during that last year. This year, we have not had as many people volunteer. We're still moving forward because there's still some people that are meeting with us because it's important to have input. It's important to have input from staff. It's important to have input from students. It's important to have input from parents. And that's really the next step that we're getting to. So you'll look at the 5 committees. We have a curriculum committee, and that's the committee that looks at what the subjects are going to be and what we could actually change, what subjects can we add, what subjects can we modify. A professional development committee, what do we need for our teachers to be able to teach in longer periods. That is scheduling committee. That is what's the schedule going to look like, and have people make suggestions, because not every school that does block scheduling does it the same. Visitation committee, and that's where we visited all the schools that have block scheduling. They had all different versions of block scheduling, and taking a look at those schools. And finally, an evaluation committee, which is very important. Evaluation committee is setting up to see where we are now, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. What are the things that we have to be concerned about? One of them I told you is graduation rate. Concerned about that. I think we're all concerned about that, having students graduate. But also grade point averages, also being able to excel or accelerate in certain subjects, all of those things. So the evaluation committee is going to take a look at our statistics the last couple years, and if we do go to block, we're going to continue to look and see if it's getting better. If it's not getting better, then we may have to revisit it. But that's what we need to do as far as the evaluation committee. So I'm going to ask, as we go up one at a time, to kind of have the chair people of each committee go up and talk a little bit about what they found out in their work. So the first one is Visitation Committee. That would be Mr. Lister.
I'll get a little closer so I can see you in my glasses.
Yeah, I think I need a little bit more.
Okay, so most important thing, I guess, with the visitation committee was we had a broad variety of teachers who volunteered. We tried to bring someone from every department and a guidance counselor as well, so that we could get some feedback. We also asked the staff to provide us with questions and concerns that we could bring with us and address, so that we can then come back. And what we did with those questions were we gave them to, if they were departmental questions or specific to that discipline, we allowed that teacher to try and address that with the teacher that they were going to go and shadow for that block period. But generally speaking, we went with the committee, 10 to 13 of us roughly. We had a welcoming committee, if you will, meet us from each school. We went to Jackson and Brick in the spring of last year, primarily because they had done it for quite some time and we wanted to go. They had hosted a number of schools in the county as they did their own exploring. So we were comfortable going there. So we met with a welcoming committee, if you will, primarily of the principal or other administrators that were primarily involved in blocking that district. Allowed our staff to ask a number of questions that generally lasted 45 minutes or so. Then our teachers were paired up with teachers in their discipline. Might not have been their exact course that they're teaching, but in their discipline, and they were able to go and observe them in a full block period at 80, 85, 90 minutes, whatever that was going to be. Then we were able to come back together as a committee and ask questions again that may have been raised during our observation of those periods. And I think most importantly, we wanted our teachers to have an opportunity to have some time with their teachers to talk, but we also wanted them to have some time with the students at the building so that they could get a feel from those kids as to how they felt the block schedules were, whether they liked it or not. And that was pretty critical for us. That's what everybody was primarily interested in knowing. How are the teachers reacting to it? How are the students reacting to it? So after we followed up, then we would come back to school and meet as a committee and talk about our findings. And then we created a Google Doc and put our thoughts on paper so that that document could be shared with all of the other committees, and primarily the steering committee. So Jackson and Brick in the spring, they are 4x4 schools. And then this fall we went to Lacey first, and we finished with Wall Township. They're AB block. And so it was a little, it was interesting seeing both models. Primarily, we're still looking for the same thing. What was it like to teach in a 90-minute period or an 85-minute period? How are the teachers and how are the kids? Because whatever model you're in, that's essentially what you're dealing with. And so, a lot of the questions that the teachers had represent the concerns that they spoke about. Other things were, scheduling. What are our periods going to look like? Are we going to have multiple parent-teacher nights? Are we going to have a transition day between our first semester and our second semester? What do our duties look like? Are we going to have a duty? What do our preps look like? So we tried to get a lot of that information and come back and see how other schools were handling it, and then share it out with those people that asked, or certainly the committees. And some of the people on our committee were also on the steering committee, so we were able to share our information pretty easily. So regardless of where we went and regardless of what model we had, the students and the staff were both really, really happy about the block schedule. They enjoyed it. They were, in Brick and Jackson's case, those kids had not known really anything different because those districts had been doing block for quite some time. So it was really interesting for us to try and go to Lacey and Wall because they've recently gone to the block format. Lacey's only in their second year and Wall's, I believe, in their third. So we would have staff and students in those buildings that had the experience in both a traditional setting and a block setting. And even in those schools, they were strongly in favor of the block experience. I'd be misleading you if I said it was unanimous in every school we went to. But clearly, the overwhelming majority of staff and students enjoyed the block experience for all the advantages that they've identified. And despite initial anxiety, stakeholders, transitioned smoothly. We've been piloting block for a few years. We've been working in these committees for a couple of years and talking administratively with the other schools. At some point you got to go, and there's not a whole lot more we can do to feel like we're ready. And some of those concerns are coming from the staff, but I think we can address those concerns. And the feeling we got talking to the other schools was, we think we're ready. It's time. We've been doing it for a couple of years to get ready and jump in, and I think everybody will, after working the wrinkles out, feel happy about it. The one thing that was interesting going to Wall, as opposed to the other schools, is they had a unit lunch, and that was one of the questions that came out of a number of our staff. Unit lunch is where the whole building shuts down for lunch. All the students eat at the same time. Monsignor Donovan, who we did not visit, has a unit lunch. Wall Township has a unit lunch for 50 minutes. And it was interesting. They had to convert one of their gyms into a partial cafeteria. They had a couple other different areas where kids could go get some food. But even talking to the Wall staff, after about 15 or 20 minutes, it just became a lapping, population. And there's, fires that essentially have to be put out around the building pretty consistently. So we as a committee got on the bus and we thought, in theory, the unit lunch is nice. You could potentially have club meetings. Kids could go to other teachers or to their teachers for extra help maybe each day. But the reality was, in talking to some of the teachers there, clubs were still meeting after school, and kids, were creating too many concerns for that to necessarily be the way that Manchester might want to do it. We've got, 30-some doors to leave our building, and with the whole population eating at once. And the other thing is, you can't just fit everybody in our cafeteria. Wall has a gym and a cafeteria, and they allow kids to eat in the auditorium basically anywhere they want in the building. And we didn't feel like that was something that we wanted to try and do. So we shared that with the steering committee when we came back.
Go ahead.
So I guess I was going to ask you this, but let's keep that one. I saw that it's incorporated into third block, but how would that work exactly? So I guess the lunches would be staggered.
Yeah, and the one good thing
Oh, you're
about...
talking about?
Oh, you mean, okay, all right, that's good.
Good evening.
Thank you.
I was involved with the scheduling committee, working with the high school administration on our master schedule. Our three kind of goals in our action plan, we focused on what would be the impact of a block schedule on our courses, what would be the impact of block schedule on our daily bell schedule, and then the schedule from September to June, the big picture. So we looked at those, and I'm going to talk a little about what we kind of discovered. And really our job was to kind of bring to light what are those issues. We weren't solving them, we weren't having all the right answers, but what would be the considerations as we investigate block schedule, what would be the things that we would have to consider. So looking at the impact of courses, we had representatives from all the departments on our committee, and, oh, you can go back, I just have one slide. And what were their kind of concerns in our first meeting? What were some of the concerns general? And some of those concerns went off into the other committees. So just focusing on that and getting the conversation started with teachers and courses. What are some of the constraints? So like world language, what would happen if a kid took Spanish 1 in the fall of 1 year and didn't take Spanish 2 until the spring of a second year? So there's some classes that really need to be back to back, or not. We have to be mindful of how far apart they are spread. And that's something with student scheduling, the Power School program, and our guidance counselors reviewing schedules, we want to consider as we review everyone's schedule. The Power School configurations, our program right now, master schedule, is configured for a traditional schedule. So there's some things that we have to work with our IT director and our guidance counselors are reconfiguring a lot of things. And that's just a technical aspect of moving to a block schedule. The new electives, obviously there's an opportunity, as Mr. Trethewey said, for students to take more courses. And the art committee went back to teachers and said, what other electives would you be interested in? Supervising the science department, we had a lot of classes come up, such as an AP environmental course, forensic science, marine science. So these are courses that teachers would be interested in teaching that went into Ms. Raimondo's survey. One of the things this year, we have already been piloting block, but this year 2 new courses were piloted. Phys Ed was the first time this year. We had a teacher who was interested in piloting and trying it out, and honors lab biology. So they're going very well, but we had an opportunity to pilot new courses this year. And the other thing is, with considering for block schedule, is lab sciences. Lab science classes, not all science classes have a 6th period that meets a double period all year. Our regular lab biology, academic class, environmental science, anatomy, physiology, they don't meet for that 6th period. So a block schedule would give equity to all students in all science classes to have that long window of time to get those hands-on, inquiry-based labs in all of our classes that we meet. So that's an important component in looking at the constraints of our current schedule. We looked at the daily schedule, the Bell schedule. We also considered the pros and cons of a 4x4, an AB, a hybrid schedule. We looked at the time frame, the 85 to kind of 88 minutes working in our contracted time that we have. We talked to lunch, what are the lunch considerations? And so for period 3, what would that look for? Because, working with Sodexo and making sure that our lunches can fit within a block period of time, but ultimately to have 4 lunches to accommodate all the students. There would be 2 periods. There would be a block period, a lunch, there'd be a lunch, a long block period, and then 2 lunches would require a split time. So one would be maybe an hour, and then a lunch, and the remaining time, another period lunch would have maybe half-hour lunch, and then an hour of time. And so that's another thing to consider is which classes can we split. And there's some classes like a science or phys ed that we couldn't. So those are things that we brought to consider in our committee. Things also looking at is our homeroom, our assembly schedules, our delayed openings, our testing schedules, and vocational. So again, our committee is looking at what are the things we have to consider and be mindful in a block schedule. Also looking at the big picture, the calendar, the whole year. What are some things that would be impacted by block schedule? Looking at back to school events and conferences, our grading, our marking periods, midterms and finals. Also looking at attendance policies, just revamping them, demerits, school trip guidelines, we might need to consider that. So a student, all trips aren't scheduled in one semester versus another semester, impacting attendance. Athletic eligibility, just reconfiguring that with credits, being eligible. And then also something like a transition day, a break between the semesters. I was fortunate enough this past Monday to visit Jackson Memorial with our AP Chem teacher to look at, for example, they have a very strong AP program. They have a course called Lab Chem 2 Honors. They also have block scheduling. And so we were able to observe a block lab period for the Lab Chem 2 Honors class. And that's, of course, one of the things we struggle is enrollment in AP Chem. And it's a very, very rigorous course. And how can we get kids into that course? And so we went to visit them. We were able to get a lot of feedback from the teachers and students in the class. We asked them, why are you taking this Lab Chem 2 class? Why are you going to take AP Chem? What do you like about block schedule? And they were very positive about it. And to hear it from students was really helpful. And the course is designed all about lab experiences, being a scientist and doing those hands-on experiences. They work individually. They're responsible for their own labs. They don't work in groups of 2 or 4. And in the class, she got them situated. She reviewed the goals of the lab. She talked about the math calculations for 20 minutes. And then they had an hour to work uninterrupted on the lab experiment, running titration labs, experiences. They were doing back titrations, which is something you might see, in a junior, sophomore, second year of college. And so that's a course that, we think might benefit our students to bridge the gap between chemistry and an AP chemistry course. but we couldn't offer it in a traditional schedule. It's something, we can have an extra honors level science course for students because they have opportunity to take more science classes. So that was a great opportunity this week, just reminding us why this might be a good opportunity. So a lot of things to consider with the schedule, a lot of work still ahead of us to do, but from our committee meeting, we were able to identify a lot of things to consider.
And just, and these are things that come up. I think that the visit to Jackson came up because our chemistry teacher had a little concern of how it would look like. So those are the one nice resources. We were able to move them to Jackson and see what exactly. And I think she had most of her questions answered. And the difficult thing for me is I've been all through this, but I don't want it to be from just my aspect. I want the committees to come up with their own ideas and come up. Many of those questions we've dealt with, I know I've dealt with before, but it's good that you're coming up with answers and something obviously from a different perspective, and that's good. So I think we're on to curriculum. Okay, Tracy?
Like the other committees, the curriculum committee had members from all the departments, including guidance, CST, and also our media specialists served on the committee. And I think that was important, especially for this committee, because curriculum is the heart of what a school is about. Curriculum and instruction go hand in hand, and so we have to make sure that that all fits in with whatever new model we're moving to. We also had an action plan that we set up to move forward, and 3 of our main goals we looked at is look at our current curriculum and see if we had any concerns about how that might have to change moving forward. Also researching the curriculum and courses that other schools had that might be opportunities for us if we moved forward. Investigating possible new courses, and I have some cool information on that in a little bit. And also collecting concerns of the staff and if there are some sort of special circumstances. Mr. Trethway brought up about advanced journalism or BIN. Those are some of the things we needed to find out through conversations with teachers and departments. Okay, so what were some of those action steps? So we looked at the curriculum and program of studies from other districts. We set up an after-school meeting for people who aren't on our committee, because I didn't just want the people on the committee, because other people may have a different course that nobody else teaches that they wanted to come to. So we set up kind of like an open house meeting where people could come in and give some sort of concerns about the particular courses, and also offer some suggestions for solutions and courses moving forward. That was held in June. We also reached out to the departments regarding course possibility. So in addition to those conversations, we had a survey for the staff where they were able to suggest courses. That was also done through Google Form. And 35 people did the Google Form, but then I had a significant number who didn't feel like doing the Google Form and just emailed me or came to me in conversation. From that pool, they came up with a number of courses, and we'll see that. And then we surveyed the students to see which courses they would have an interest in. And when you see the number of student responses, it's pretty overwhelming how much they participated in that. We also have to collaborate with all the other committees, because scheduling has to do with curriculum and steering, and so that was a big part of the conversation. And also we had to collaborate with the curriculum department, because we can't just create new courses, there's a process, and we have timelines and things like that. Okay, so when we surveyed the staff of new courses, every department that's up there made suggestions. And so we came from all those departments, and Linda, just click one more time. And they suggested over 60 different courses possibility. Now, obviously, we can't roll out 60 new courses in a year, so we have to figure out where we're moving from there. These are some of the courses that they came up with, and this is what we used to create the student survey. The survey was given to students, or offered to students in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, because they'll still be with us next year. Seniors may have wanted to take a course, but if they won't be here to take it, it's kind of useless information. And so we had 444 responses to the student survey. 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, that's about 750 students. So it's about 59% of the students in those grades respond. After that, we followed up with the staff in each department to see who might have an interest in teaching the course. Because you can create a course, but if nobody wants to teach it, you're not really going to be able to run it well. And so then we got feedback in addition to see how that goes. Now, our next steps moving forward, we have to create courses, and also budgetary concerns. You know, one course that was suggested was a philosophy course. We have no materials, so that's not just a teacher, that's a whole program. And so are we ready to do that, and do we have people who are qualified to teach those things? So this is one of the more exciting areas because, as Mr. Treadway said, our kids are getting new opportunities. You know, forensics was up there, history of the 60s for our history kids were up there, new AP opportunities, AP environmental, comparative, thank you, I blanked out on that one. And so in each department, Project Adventure as its own course. You know, we have the Project Adventure course that we have all the materials and we have trained staff, but it's only one part of phys ed, where now students who like that can become an entire course. And so students who have an affinity for history or science or math, someone recommended discrete math and Calc BC, which is above the calc that we teach. Now they have the time and the availability to get to some of those courses that they may not have had before. And that's it.
Professional development, my turn.
It's your
Oh,
turn.
my turn.
I would say my committee is the most exciting committee, but what are you saying? Our committee got together and we too were comprised of teachers, and they really did a great job. They created a strategic action plan, and in that strategic action plan they identified some areas. First of all, they wanted to become familiarized with the different block models, and basically to base our professional development on the felt needs of staff. Because just like we differentiate for our students, we want to differentiate professional development according to our staff needs. So some of our committee members did go on visitations with Mr. Lister's committee. We put out a survey. The committee developed a survey, put that out to staff, and overwhelmingly, the responses, the three main areas they were concerned about were time management, classroom management, and student engagement. So that to us equals planning. How do I plan for this block? So originally we had said, you know, we were going to start professional development in February. We said there's no way we can wait. So October 12th in service, Tracy and I developed a workshop on how to plan for a 90-minute block. So we figured whatever model is chosen, that 90 minutes would be a good benchmark time frame, and it would give the teachers a framework. During that time, we provided sample activities to do during a 90-minute block. Activities such as jigsaw, Socratic seminar, stations, advanced organizers, general tips about pacing. That seems to be a very big concern amongst teachers. We provided resources and sample lesson plans. Teachers actually worked in groups to develop lessons that they could implement in block schedule using chat stations. We have monthly committee meetings with the committee in our departments. We met in December. We just met with our social studies and English department and really listened to some of their concerns, had those conversations, and teachers basically overall, they in the end said we're not averse to moving to a block, we just are concerned about which model we're going to move forward. That's their basic. So our job as the professional development